If you were a hardcore PC gamer in the 90s, chances are the tight claustrophobic corridors of sci-fi shooter Descent are deeply ingrained in your memory. Descent, which you can see here in all its MS-DOS based glory, put a brand new spin on the growing first-person shooter genre, allowing the player 6 degrees of freedom as they piloted a spacecraft around several robot-infested moon bases. The game was a massive success. It spawned a few sequels and a popular copycat called Forsaken, but for some reason this style of first-person shooter never completely caught on. Fast forward to the present day and 6 DOF FPS games are long forgotten, along with boot discs and floppy drives. The perfect time then for someone to come in and resurrect the genre maybe. Well, that's what the peeps at SigTrap Games are hoping for with their upcoming release, Sublevel Zero, a new take on the 6 DOF games of old, but crammed with modern day twists like procedural level generation and weapon crafting. I caught up with Gary Lloyd, lead artist on Sublevel Zero at Gamescom, and asked him nicely if he'd tell us more.
It's a roguelike, so you have one life to basically get as far as you can through the game. We're looking at a single player campaign with around 8 levels, each one with different environment types and enemies. Enemies drop weapons. There are also like loot chests that are sort of randomly spawned within the levels as well. And you could get a rusty minigun and a sort of regular flamethrower, sort of craft them together, and the result of that inherits the stats from both weapons. So if you craft 2 bad weapons together, you'll get a lower end of the sort of next level stats for the next weapon. Where if you get 2 good weapons and combine them together, you'll get a much better sort of next tier up on the crafting tree.
Considering Sublevel Zero is a roguelike, it must be pretty tough to beat. Are players going to need to be hard as nails to make it through to the end of the game, or do you think it's a fair challenge?
We didn't want to do anything that's like run and gun. We want it to be pretty tactical. We want players to take into account sort of actions and consequences. You don't want to go running into a room, guns blazing, because you can just get completely swamped. You don't know what's coming in the next room because the levels are randomly generated, but then sort of enemy placement is also randomly generated. So you don't know where you're going to get attacked from in whatever direction.
I love the idea of a Descent-like game, but with procedurally generated levels. I don't think we've seen anything like that before. Will there be much variation to the look and feel of these levels as you progress through the game?
For the campaign, we're looking at 4 different sort of environment types. So we've got the industrial biome, which is sort of like cramped, claustrophobic corridors, sort of very limited amounts of space. And then you've got the sort of like lava caves, which you've got sort of environmental hazards then that come into play, which you've got to be careful of, but you can potentially push enemies into lava and sort of damage them and destroy them. Say if you're running low on ammunition or something, that sort of progresses into sort of another sort of cave set, which is full of like emissive crystals. And they're also another sort of environmental hazard. You can sort of shoot at them and like break shards off and things like that, and that shrapnel can damage enemies and things. And then the final one is like a military biome with static turrets, so a lot more defences, things like that. And that's towards the end of the game. So hopefully, by the time you get that far, you've mastered the controls and you've mastered the sort of the mechanics of the game.
This all sounds great, but what about multiplayer, Gary? You've got multiplayer in there, right? Please say you've got multiplayer.
Yeah, we're definitely interested in multiplayer. At the moment, we're just going to focus on the single player campaign and get that out, and sort of based on community feedback, our desire to keep adding content and expanding the game post-launch. Multiplayer could be a component that we potentially add later.
Disappointing lack of multiplayer aside, Sublevel Zero is looking like it could be quite the indie hit, appealing to not only older gamers like myself, but also those who've never had the chance to experience the wonders of a 6-DoF shooter before. I played through one of the earlier levels of the game, and while I didn't get to try out any of the crafting mechanics, I was very impressed by the smooth controls that worked perfectly with the twin analog sticks of the Xbox 360 controller that I was using. The 6 degrees of freedom meant my ship could strafe or fly in any direction I wanted with no loss of speed, and that kind of zero-G feel to the player movement has been absent from first-person shooters and space combat games in general for a very long time. I also enjoyed the sense of disorientation that I felt as I flew up and around corners or dived through small holes in the floor. Emerging from tight corridors into larger rooms with multiple exits while not knowing which way was up and which was down made me feel like I was flying through an MC Escher painting at times. Luckily though, there's a handy 3D map that will show you exactly where to go if, like me, you get completely turned around and confused. Enemy-wise, I was less impressed. At the moment, there isn't much variety to the things that can kill you, and the AI behaviour doesn't go much further than a simple turn to face you and shoot affair. The tight confines of the levels don't leave that much room for tense dogfights, granted, but here's hoping there are some more lively bad guys in the full release, which is due out sometime this October for PC, Mac, Linux and Oculus Rift.
Coming up this week, The Walking Dead infects the escapists. Ian finds out about the different locations on offer.
And Rare Replay, we get all nostalgic about how we used to play games like Perfect Dark.
Yeah, or Viva Pinata.
You played Viva Pinata?
Yeah.
You?
Yeah.
Grumpy Beard?
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Okay.